let's talk about tonight's top story, a massive military offensive by Vladimir Putin, the Russian military, overnight, striking all parts of Ukraine, far and wide, as NATO is now basically saying, hey, this crap is about to hit the fan. This crap is about to hit the fan. But first, I want to start with something a French politician said overnight. Let me know what you think about this and whether or not you agree with her. Marine Le Pen, of course, who ran for president 3 times in France, she was just interviewed, and she said, quote, if we continue to supply weapons to Ukraine, which, by the way, we don't have, and she's right, they don't have them, they're running out, to Ukraine, depriving our own army, then we are facing a 100-year war, she says. If we continue to supply weapons that we don't have, depriving our own army, then we are facing a 100-year war. The idea, of course, she would know as a French lady, right? The French fought the British in a 100 years war. That's actually what it was called, a 100 years war. Heck, we just had a 20-year war in Afghanistan. So if you think like in the 21st century that we can't have like a 100-year war again, well, we actually witnessed a quarter of that already happening, or a fifth of that already almost happening.
It was a baby war.
A baby version of the 100 years war, 20 years. So especially if the West keeps funneling a nonstop drip of weapons into Ukraine, which they seem hell-bent on doing over the past 24 hours. This morning, in fact, the EU announcing a massive new round of weapons for Ukraine. Here's the EU pledging to spend over $1 billion on arms for Ukraine, member states say. So, and I'll just quote the Wall Street Journal. Here's the Wall Street Journal. The European Union plans to spend at least $1.1 billion in ammunitions for member countries' stocks after and rebuilding your country's stocks after a year of supporting Kiev's war against Russia. Before Russia's large-scale invasion of Ukraine last year, the 27-country bloc shunned financing weapons or supporting lethal assistance to other nations. It's something they didn't do. Members have now funded their defense and foreign military support either directly or through the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So they're funneling this money or aid to NATO. It's a way of getting around it. Soon after Russia's invasion, the EU broke that long-standing taboo and said it would reimburse a portion of its members' military donations to Ukraine. Since then, the EU has increased the funding it is devoting to defense. End quote.
That's so crazy. While European economies are just tottering on the brink. You see protests throughout Europe. In France, the workers' strike. In Portugal, we have the teachers' strike because the cost of living has increased so much that on these low income wages, people just can't get by. We have war protests, anti-war protests in Germany.
Right.
There is a faction, even though the media doesn't tell you.
They're warning of
blackout. Happening.
Warning of blackouts through Germany.
No food. Well, a lot of it is also due to Brexit in England. And just today, I was speaking to my banker about how so many people in Europe have adjustable rate mortgages. So they never saw a conflict coming. And so they locked in like 0% loans, 0.5% loans, in some cases negative percent loans. And then all of a sudden, the European Union tanks its own economy with Russian sanctions and supporting weapons packages, and people's mortgages doubled overnight, tripled in some cases. It's just getting worse and worse. And so if you're a teacher on a fixed income and now you have, twice as expensive for your house, for your food, for your gas, no wonder there's protests. What can they do?
Right. It's unbelievable. And this morning, NATO is playing up the fact that Russia is about to score a major victory in Bakhmut, and therefore we need to send more weapons. So they keep saying Bakhmut is about to collapse. Bakhmut is about to collapse. And we're going to ask Scott Ritter about that in a few moments. Here's the head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, today tweeting this. Important meeting with the EU defense ministers in Stockholm. As Russia's war of aggression grinds on, we need to step up and sustain our support so that Ukraine prevails. This includes boosting NATO allies' stockpiles of ammunition and focusing on joint procurement. So they're realizing, we don't have the production in the EU and NATO countries. They're running out of ammunition. They don't have tanks. Germany can't even produce tanks. I mean, literally, the factories, they can't even produce them, was revealed today. And that was confirmed. I mean, it's been reported over the past few months, but confirmed today. So Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. So let's send more weapons and more money that we can't track, and that it's winding up in the hands of corrupt people. And they're selling our weapons to Africa and the Middle East. Congressman Matt Gaetz, a few days ago at the end of February, had an epic showdown with the Pentagon over a 1996 law called our End Use Monitoring Program law that's supposed to track all of this shit. So we're supposed to know, hey, when we send you $10 billion in weapons, like, we track it. That's the law. So under the law, all of these dollars and weapons are supposed to be tracked. But Matt Gaetz is wondering why the Pentagon isn't following this law. Watch.
Thank you, gentleman. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gaetz, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Storch, you're our watchdog. Ukraine has a corruption problem, right?
There's a long history of issues with corruption in Ukraine.
Infrastructure minister arrested for stealing $400,000. Deputy head of Zelensky's office can't explain where the sports cars came from, so he had to resign. Deputy defense minister resigned over contracting corruption, but the defense ministry put out a statement that his resignation was a worthy deed. And the wife of a former Ukrainian politician was found with $22 million in cash crossing the border into Hungary last year. Seems as though a lot of the zeal for enforcement of the anti-corruption efforts seems to align with the Republican control of the House of Representatives in our country. Maybe that's a coincidence. You cannot testify, truthfully under oath, that the DOD has complied with the policy and law regarding end-use monitoring during all times of this conflict. Isn't that right?
So I want to be careful here when I respond to you, Congressman, to make sure that I'm clear. We are conducting a series of evaluations that look at the controls that DOD has in place to ensure that they are taking the steps that are required.
I get all that, but here's the operative question. We haven't complied with end-use monitoring according to the law with everything we've sent to Ukraine to date, have we?
So our 2020 report, which is our last public report on this, made a number of recommendations. All of those have been met.
I know, but you're sort of dodging the question. You cannot testify that we have complied with the end-use monitoring requirements at all times during this conflict, can you?
So we have an ongoing evaluation right now.
I get that it's ongoing. I'm looking backwards. You cannot testify that everything is complied with the law and the end-use monitoring, can you?
So some of that gets into the classified report that we issued previously.
But I think everyone watching this could see that if you could testify to that, you would. You're citing a classified report. I don't know why that report's classified. I think the American people deserve to know if this 1996 law is being followed or not. You can't testify that it is being followed, and so I think they can draw reasonable conclusions from that.
I mean,
a portion of it's classified. Okay, if a portion of it's classified, then don't talk about the portion that's classified. Then talk about the portion that's not, but you can't.
Okay.
You can't tell us where any of this stuff goes.
Yeah, I would like to tell the IRS that my tax returns are ongoing. Whenever, yeah, you're going to get them. They are ongoing.
When I die, you'll get them. Mm-hmm. For now, though,
it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And then my death tax is ongoing.
So if I'm paying taxes to fund corrupt politicians in Ukraine, I'd like to know where that money's going, right? Mm-hmm. When I sign that check every year for the IRS and I send my taxes, I would love to know which portion of my taxes is going into Zelensky's pocket.
Sure.
I'd have a right to know that. Why don't I have a right to know that? By the way, today, Biden is about to announce this massive new budget, raising taxes by $2 trillion. $2 trillion.
For us.
For us.
To send there.
Yeah, to send there. And, because we're going to reduce the deficit. Here, I got an idea. How about you stop printing money and sending $140 billion to Ukraine? There's an idea. You want to reduce the budget? You want to reduce our deficit? Why not do that instead? Lower the military-industrial complex. The Pentagon is amazing, isn't it? And last night, the Pentagon stopped the United States from sharing alleged Russian war crimes with the International Criminal Court. This is an amazing story. Let me repeat that. According to the New York Times, the Pentagon blocked sharing evidence of possible Russian war crimes with the Hague Court. So this is amazing. I mean, think about this for a second. The U.S. has a history of getting in the way of the International Criminal Court to investigate suspected war crimes that are committed by the United States and its allies, but it's offering to help probe Russia and their alleged war crimes. But then the Pentagon, so the U.S. is saying, oh yeah, we've seen evidence of Russia's war crimes, but we can't turn them over because that would mean that we, the United States, would also have to admit that we commit war crimes.
Right.
Isn't that amazing? According to the Times, the rest of the Biden administration, including the State Department, Justice Department, and intelligence agencies, favor giving information to the International Criminal Court. Congress modified its restrictions on helping the court to facilitate the investigation into Russia's military operations. So the Pentagon blocking this based on the concern that this would set a precedent for Americans to be prosecuted for their military actions. It's really amazing.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
So this is the beginning of this spring offensive. This is the big question. Is this the big spring offensive right now in Ukraine? Only, I guess, one man knows for sure, and that's Vladimir Putin. But overnight, Russia launched this massive offensive aimed at the heart of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. 81 missiles fired, large track of 6 hypersonic missiles.
Don't you think it's a little strange that we keep putting seasons on these offensives?
Like it's summer.
I mean, we really put a lot into the winter offensive.
Yeah.
You know, what was going to happen. And I guess if you're, planning war, then you do plan around the weather.
Yes. Yeah. I guess. I mean, and right now, this could portend the launch of a massive offense, which we're going to talk to Scott Ritter about in just a moment. But here's the map of the airstrikes over the past 24 hours, which just hit just about every spot in Ukraine. Nothing was left untouched in this. And so, of course, NATO sounding the alarm. We need to send more money and more weapons into Ukraine. That's the answer. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.